Oh boy. Hi, welcome to Film Stash. My name's Douglas Campbell, and today we are talking about The Crow, Salvation. Alex Corvus, played by Eric Mapes, returns to the world of the living to solve the murder of his girlfriend Lauren, whom he was framed for her murder. I'd like to give a quick shout out to my brother Joe Campbell. He did the makeup for me this week, and while the design itself looks pretty simple, there were a couple of elements in there that were a little more complicated, and so I just want to give my brother a quick shout out. He did such a great job. I mean, look at this. Doesn't this look neat? Isn't this freaky? I kind of want to go to Taco Bell with this thing on. Like, it looks so weird. I love it. It looks really good. So yeah, just again, thank you for doing this for me. I really appreciate it. You're awesome, man. Due to the financial disappointment of The Crow City of Angels, starting with this sequel, all Crow sequels went straight to direct-to-video. But before production eventually settled on the corrupt cop storyline, they actually approached Rob Zombie to helm and direct the script. Now, this was his directorial debut, and he was going at it from the approach of a more horror-centric story. This film, if it were to get made, would have been titled The Crow 2037. With Miramax not wanting to aim towards that direction, they eventually decided to go with director Bharat Nalluri with this film. And in the end, we have a movie that the good parts are decent, but ultimately, you have a film that does some things better than the original two, yet it does something so stupid and bad that just like, it's infuriating. It's so uneven. I hate it. For the few issues that I had with the original film, like, say what you will about him, but I think that they're gradually disappearing over time watching these sequels, because honestly, seeing it so palely imitated again and again with these sequels, I've come to realize, like, the soul that was in the first one, it's just not there. There was an intention with that first film, and kind of seeing it done so poorly, it's really making me appreciate that first one. Alright, so we'll just jump right into the positives here. Not that there's many positives. We'll get to that. But the positives that I can give it, the one thing I do appreciate at the very least, they are going to tell the same story essentially. It's a man coming back from the dead to right a wrong, but unlike the previous movies where usually it's him and a loved one getting killed by thugs or crooks or horrible gang members, like, this time around, these people are killed by what society typically deems the forces of good. He's killed by cops that frame him for the murder of his girlfriend, and it's carried through. He's sent to the electric chair, and it certainly creates an interesting element too, because before he dies, you do see a symbol, sort of scar. He sees it within the room where everybody's watching him get electrocuted. And it does set up a mystery angle. Now, mystery angle isn't really done all that well, but does set up at least a different type of story, because it's not just, I'm building my way to the top. This time around, it's like, I know who's in that room, I know who worked on the case, and I'm gonna go through this list until I find that scar. While this isn't as gothically or dramatically and thematically portrayed as in the previous movies, is that the Crow's powers, they've always been super vague. You get that he is invincible, and that's the main takeaway. This film, in a weird Sam Raimi kind of Spider-Man way, you find out what his powers are back to back within the beginning of the movie in two scenes. When he wakes up for the first time and he's escaping jail, he's getting shot at, he's jumping over barbed wire fence, and you get to see that he is invincible. You get to see that power up front. You're discovering it along with the protagonist, and I think at the very least, even if not a lot of elements are done as well in this movie, you are getting an explanation of what his powers are, what his power set is. Then the next scene, as he's going through the evidence locker, touching photos, he's touching the knife that was used to frame him for the murder of Lauren. You get to see along with him that it does flash back to moments of pain and misery and happiness. And I at least appreciate that we are getting a sense of what the powers are of the Crow. Granted, I know what they are after seeing 3 of the movies, but at the very least, I like that they're making it understandable for the audience. Last but not least, the one consistent performance from beginning to end of all the actors involved, the best one, it's Kirsten Dunst as Lauren's sister. She can get very shouty, she's very whiny, she's not that likable of a character either, but at the very least, she does give a good, consistent performance of all the main actors involved. One of the few clunky things with these sequels is that they have a hard time justifying why this Harley Quinn design that Brandon Lee made so famous with his iteration of the Crow sticks around from person to person, because these are different people. They technically shouldn't look the same as the Crow at all, other than the fact that they have a crow with them. And the comics, they definitely make these crows look different. But the one thing I will appreciate about this, even though it makes no damn sense at all, it makes no sense at all, is that when it comes to the electric chair, he gets his scars that kind of resemble the Crow, because the electric chair has this mask. It goes over the face, and it just shocks him like crazy, and it leaves these scars behind that give him that look. But it's not the same thing as, I'm putting on the makeup again. It's not that. This time there is a story-based reason for it, even though it's dumb. Like, he's a guy who, with the powers of the Crow, can heal, and yet those scars still stick around. Makes no damn sense, but you know what? I don't care. I will say this. Eric Mabus as Alex Corvus's Crow, he isn't as bad. I mean, he's alright. He's certainly better than Vincent Perez in City of Angels, but the problem with it is I feel like he tries too hard to sound cool for most of the movie. And the times that he does, it takes me out of it. Some of the lines he delivers, it sounds fine. It sounds serviceable. But then other times, you're trying to be cool and moody and... don't... So... What's weird about the budget and how it was used too is that a lot of the stuff is mixed. Because you have some things that look great. There's like a car stunt and car explosions. That looks pretty cool for $10 million. Say what you will about Alex Corvus's makeup and how it's derivative and kind of a retread but done differently. It looks really gory and weird and neat, and I'll give them that. But then you have the city itself. Because they're filming it so cheaply, a lot of these buildings, like, it starts off fine. It's like, looks like they're filming it out of prison. And then gradually, the buildings become more cheaper and they look bad. And the strip club where one of the fights happened, it looks like you have a fake outer building in front of a black tarp. It looks that bad. But then one of the few CG shots that they do have in here, this is a concept that they took from Tim Pope's City of Angels, but this Crow, he shoots himself in the head to intimidate this one cop, get him really scared, show that he's invincible now. It has this really spotty, kind of bad looking effect. Again, it's a cool idea, but it's not executed that great. This is my biggest one. Problem with this movie is that you have a really interesting concept, and because you are making police officers who are corrupt the villains, you really could be saying something within the story, because you have the spirit of vengeance and loss that pursues wrongdoings. And you're mixing in the real world politics of police officers in there. There is so much that you could have touched with this, and instead, they really don't do anything with it. They really don't. They make it essentially like 1950s corrupt cops. They're in cahoots with the mob, see? And it's just like, it's so much wasted potential. It's such a wasted potential. And I know it's the early 2000s. They probably weren't going to dig into that anyway. But considering that they throw this in, that could have been an interesting story element. Oh! Do you know what that means? That means it's time for mission. I'm cool and moody, just like Alex Corvus. And today's popcorn, I actually got this at Sam's, so I'm very excited to try it. It is hot honey. It is honey, but there's a little bit of a kick to it. At least that's what it says right here. It's a promise. You know me, I love hot things, so let's just see how it tastes. Let's just see how it tastes, how it smells. Let's get to know it. Formally know it. Shake its hand. Take it out to dinner. See where the night goes, you know? I'm not gonna do that, kid. Let's see. There isn't a smell of hotness to it. It smells more honey, which I guess if I'm going for hot honey, that's a good thing. It smells like honey. All right, let's just quit wasting time. Let's just dig right into it then. I will give it a couple seconds. These things usually fire back up at me. Alright, so not a big bit of burn, but there's a little bit, and I felt it right around here. Right around here. I felt it just a little pinch right there. It's pretty sweet. I kind of like it. The honey taste is very prominent. It's very light. The popcorn's very fluffy. You can crush it very easily with your teeth. You can crush it very easily with your gums if you don't have teeth. I would give it probably an even 7 out of 10. It's alright. It's good. Alright, I'm not going to waste any time. Let's get to the negatives right now. The budget from City of Angels to Salvation, it went from $13 million to $10 million. And in doing so, there were significant budget cuts. And unfortunately, the stylization of the city, the very comic booky and gothic feel of both these cities, they take such a backseat in this movie. It is such a downgrade. It is such a downgrade. It essentially looks like you took really cheap stuff that was already lying around or that it was cheap to film in, and you just did that real quick. You slapdashed it with no style. And the thing is, like, you went from a city that resembled Tim Burton's Gotham City from Batman to a CW show. That is the style of this city now. It is so bland. And the shots in this movie, they really don't help the staticky nature of the camera movements and some of the stylization. The acting from the cast, it ranges from the good of Kirsten Dunst, okay, to just bad, to just downright bad. There is so much bad acting involved in this thing. I don't fully blame the actors, to be honest with you. I blame mostly the script, but it's really not doing them any favors, man. It's making some of these people look so bad. One of the worst offenders, it's unfortunately the main villain. It's the police chief. The acting involved with this villain, it's not the worst. It's not that terrible. It's alright. But the thing that I'm not crazy about, and this is unfortunately a repeat offense, they have to have the villain somehow know that the crow's the crow. Somehow to find out that the crow's the crow and that the crow is the weakness, or that there is a weakness involved. And the thing is, when it comes to the mystery angle that they're trying to present forward, somehow this police chief, he knows the weakness, which has been changed, by the way. Somehow knows that it's Alex Corvus. He somehow knows it's him. He doesn't think it's like, oh, it's some other guy. He's clearly the crow. It couldn't be because of a botched execution or something simple. Like, no. He thinks he's back because of mystical means.
I've read about this.
No, you didn't!
Which means that the one mystery that you had is spoiled because that police chief is your main villain. He's the guy with the scar. It's very obvious. So dumb because they gave some time to explain the powers away. Surely you could have had like a confrontation between the police chief and Alex Corvus, and then you saw like the invincibility at play, which then could have led to suspicion of something magical's happening. Nope, he just knows. It's dumb. On top of that, obviously, everyone's in shock that this guy is coming after them or knows so much about them. The thing that bugs me the most is that they don't recognize that he is Alex. They don't recognize that he looks like that guy. His guy is very recognizable. If I was being followed by this guy who was heavily covered in the news and who we framed for murder, I'm recognizing this dude. And I get that they're trying to be like, oh, well, the scars make him unrecognizable. It didn't say anything. It wasn't until later in the movie when one of the cops who's about to get killed finally becomes the wiser. It is so stupid. As cool as the makeup looks, it does not do that great a job of making him look like a different person. I'm just gonna say that. It's so ridiculous. And this is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. They really, at the end of the movie, tried to set up sequel bait. They had the captain attached to the electric chair. They put the mask on him to give him a similar justice. All right, you know what? That's cool. And I'll even say this. The death effects, like the fire and the smoke and the blood and all that, that was actually really cool. I will give them some props for that. But they really tried to sequel bait it like a freaking Marvel movie. He's like, I'll come after you. I'll be back. I know powers too. I'll be back. And it's like, hey, first off, that's not how the powers of the Crow work, dude. Like, again, we barely saw you work with mystical elements, so how the hell do you know you're coming back? You're just dying, dude. You're dead. It is so stupid. It is so stupid. That's not how the Crow's power works. And on top of that, I just don't care to see this villain back. He sucks. I'm sorry, Joe Dirt's dad, but the villain sucks. In the end, this movie, while I do commend that they tried something a little different, this movie, it's on the same level of badness as City of Angels, but at the very least, at least there was still style to City of Angels. Some of the acting, for the most part, even surrounded by Batman villains, was alright. Gee, it's like, it's really on the same level. I don't know what to pray. I would say this one is slightly worse. The CW cheapness of this really doesn't help. I would give this a 4 out of 10. So for this week's recommendation, I had a hard time kind of figuring out what to recommend. Because do I go off of the merits of the Crow movie? In which case I would direct you to the movies I recommended before. Or would I take it off of the merits of the cop angle? This is where my week's recommendation would go. I was going to recommend the classic movie Robocop because it does deal with the corrupt cop element, but at the same time it seems to be more a critique of capitalism. I'm actually going to leave it to you. If you guys think you know a movie that does this concept so much better, or if I were one of the few people that like this movie and I would want to watch another movie, please let me know in the comments. I'd really like to know what you would recommend to me. I definitely would recommend watching Robocop. I would recommend watching Robocop over this movie. That's all the time we have for today here at Film Stash. My name's Douglas Campbell, and if you excuse me, I gotta add to the stash.